Let's say you're socially anxious. Okay, so what happens when you're socially anxious? You go to a party, your heart's beating. Why? The party is a monster. Why? Because it's judging you. And it's judging you, it's putting you low down the dominance hierarchy, because that's what a negative judgment is. And that interferes with your sexual success. And that means that you're being harshly evaluated by nature itself. Right? So you are confronting the dragon of chaos when you go into the social situation. And so what do? You're like this, right? You hunch over, and that's low dominance. I'm no threat. It's like, well, that's not going to get you very far. You know, but that's a logical thing to do in the face of a tyrant. So I'm no threat. You know, you look at the king and you're dead. I'm no threat. I'm hunched over. And then what's happening internally? What are people thinking about me? What are people thinking about me? Am I looking stupid? Am I looking foolish? Geez, I'm awkward. I hate being here. Man, I'm sweating too much. It's all internalized, right? It's all self-focused. The eye isn't working. What do you tell people? Don't stop thinking about yourself, because you can't. It's like, don't think of a white elephant. White elephant, white elephant, white elephant. You can't tell someone to stop thinking about something because they get caught in the loop. What you do with socially anxious people is you say, look at other people. Look at them, right? Why? Because if you look at them, you can tell what they're thinking. And then unless you're terribly socialized, and some people are. Some people have no social skills, and so the reason they can't go to a party is because they don't even know how to introduce themselves. Like no one ever taught them how to behave. And so they're really good candidates for behavior therapy, because you walk them through the process of how you actually manifest the procedures that are associated with social acceptability. But most people aren't like that. They have the ability. So if they're really introverted and high in neuroticism, they can usually talk quite well to someone one-on-one. Why? Because they look at them. Well, if I look at you, it's another thing to do if you're ever speaking to a group of people. Never speak to the group of people. That doesn't exist. You talk to individuals, and then they reflect for you the entire group, because they're all entrained. So you look at one person, they broadcast to you what everyone's thinking, and you know how to talk to one person. So it's easy. So as soon as you focus on the person, not you, push your attention outward, use your eye, you push your attention outward, and you start watching, well then all your automatic mechanisms kick in, and you stop being awkward. Because if we're talking, and I'm looking here, I don't know what you're going to do next, and I'm going to put disjunctions into they're like bad chords in the melody of our conversation. And the reason is I'm not paying attention. So that's why the eye is the thing at the top of the pyramid. It's like the thing that enables you to win the set of all possible dominance hierarchies is the eye. Pay attention. Pay attention. That's the critical issue. That's why the Egyptians worshipped Horus. That's why Horus was the thing that rescued Osiris from the depths. It's the capacity to pay attention. What do you pay attention to most? What your right hemisphere signals as anomalous. It attracts your attention. It's like, this isn't going quite right. I'm not looking at that. Wrong. That's what you look at. That's what you look at. What's not going right, because that's the terrible monster that might eat you, but it's also the place you get all the information. So that's why it's useful to have discussions with your enemies, because they will tell you things you do not know. And that's such a great thing, because if you don't know them, well, you're not very smart, are you? You know, there may be a time when you go somewhere that's the thing you need to know. And maybe your enemy will tell you why you're such a fool, you know, and a bunch of other things that aren't true too. But even one thing that's accurate, it's like, yeah, thanks very much, man, maybe I'll do some work on that, and I won't have to carry that forward. So, and then that's part of the reason, again, why the terrible predator, it's always the terrible predator that has the gold. It's like, it's the person who delivers the message you do not want to hear. So it's rough, but it doesn't matter. Life is rough.
I mean, it isn't necessarily the case that you can do it. It's hard to do. I mean, and that, of course, it's hard, I suppose, in proportion to the suffering that you're undergoing. And it isn't necessarily the case that you can always manage it, but sometimes you can manage it, and it's good if you can. People need to search for meaning because they get corrupted by suffering if their life isn't meaningful. That's how it looks to me. because you can't torture an animal forever without it lashing out. And so if your life is nothing, if there's nothing in it that speaks to you, there's still going to be suffering. You can't talk yourself out of that. And so then I see people tearing down traditional structures, let's say, or they're casual about them. Another rule in this new book is do not casually denigrate social institutions or creative achievement. Well, why social institutions? Well, I've counseled lots of people who were lost. And so if you came to see me and I was your therapist, I'm very practical. I'd say to you, okay, well, let's look at your life for a minute. Do you have an intimate relationship? What about your family? And that could be, married with kids, or it could be the family of your birth, your siblings and your parents and so on. How's that functioning? Do you have anyone there? Do you have a job? Or maybe a career even, if you're fortunate. At least a job that keeps body and soul together, and maybe where there's some chance of advancement and hope. Do you know how to use your time outside of work productively? Do you take care of your mental and physical health? Do you manage the temptations, drug and alcohol use and that sort of thing? Do you manage those temptations effectively? Are you educated? Are you as educated as you are intelligent? Have you? And those are standard patterns of activity in the world. Do you have kids? Do you have a wife? Or a husband? Do you have a job? I mean, it's mundane in some sense, and you can look beyond all those standard answers for meaning. But if you're overwhelmed by life, anxious and suffering, that's a good place to start. Put that together. Why? Well, the answer to that is because that's what people do. That's what people do. That's the best we've been able to manage. And if you don't have that, because you're a human being like other human beings, you're going to suffer for it. And so attacks on that, assaults on that aren't that helpful. I see this sometimes with young people when they're talking about getting married. We don't need to get married. We don't need a piece of paper. It's like, really? That's the depth of thought you've put into this? It's like you're not going to mark this permanence with conscious awareness and social celebration and the sanction of your community and a beautiful ceremony? That's just nothing? You'll let that go? Well, what are you going to replace it with? Nothing. You can say it's I don't want to be married in a church. I don't believe in God. Fair enough, but good luck filling in the hole. What often happens to people is they start paying attention to themselves. They get self-conscious. So, let's say I got self-conscious all of a sudden during this Q&A. What would happen is that I'd stop paying attention to the questions and the screen and what I'm doing, and I'd start paying attention to how I was feeling and to the nervousness, and then I'd start to get aware that I was not responding properly, and that would make me more nervous, and then I would get more aware of that. And that can just shut me down entirely. And that's happened to me now and then in a lecture, and sometimes it almost happened when I was talking to Sam Harris the first time. What you have to do in a situation like that is, it's not so much that you have to stop attending to yourself, because if you start thinking, I should stop attending to myself, then you'll just think about yourself more. What you have to do instead is pay more attention to the situation and to the people that you're talking to. So you have to increase the degree to which you're attending outwardly, and that'll stop you from attending inwardly. That's a very effective technique. You can practice that, generally speaking. Every time you get nervous, start paying more attention, and that'll help you out a lot. That's a really good suggestion for social anxiety in general, is that if you see, most people, but not everyone, but most people have enough implicit social skill because they were reasonably socialized when they were children, so that they do know how to act in social situations, but they get anxious, and then that interferes with them implementing what they know. Just like if you're a pianist and you get anxious and self-conscious while you're playing, you'll forget what you know because, well, you've activated a different part of your brain. If you can remember to pay attention and you can direct your attention outward and you attend hard enough, then what will happen, and try to put the other person at ease and try to ask them questions, then that'll kick in the automatic, because you're paying attention to what the person is doing and to their facial expressions and all of that.